Hi, this is Elise Buie from Elise Buie Family Law with the Maximum Mom podcast. And today I am thrilled to have Rosanna Berardi as my guest. And she is another queen of the trifecta: lawyer, mom, entrepreneur. And when I spoke with Rosanna, she said something that was so profound. And I'm not going to tell you what it is quite yet. I haven't even told her what it is. So we're going to talk about it though. First, let me get Rosanna to introduce herself and kind of bring us through your journey. Like, talk to us a little bit. We'll start with your lawyer journey. Tell us a little bit about how you decided to come to law.
Well, that's a good story. Thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here. I love your podcast. So I was not one of those people that came out of the womb saying I was going to be a lawyer, like no clue. I always tell this story that I got scared into the profession, and I went to college thinking I was going to be an English teacher because I love to read and write. And I was an education major for the first 2 years of my college journey until I had to do a teaching placement. And I had to do a teaching placement at one of the city schools here in Buffalo, New York. And I sat there and I looked around and I saw what the teacher had to do. And I'm like, no, there's like hard pass. There's no way I can do this for a living. What was I thinking? So I remember going back to my college and walking down the hallway thinking, I can't really do anything with, reading and writing. I think I'll just go to law school. So I went home, I told my parents, and they were like, "What? Law school? You've never talked once about being a lawyer." I'm like, "I know, but I want an advanced degree that's flexible because I don't know what I want to do." And boom, there you have it.
Wow.
So for still all these years later, I still love my law degree because it is so flexible. I mean, if you can read, write, and analyze, you can do a lot of things in the world. And people think about law school as, you've got to be a litigator in court or a DA. You don't have to do any of that. I'm a transactional lawyer. I don't step foot in a court ever. It's a great, great gig. And anyone that asks about law school, I'm always the first to say, go, just go. It's a great, great education.
I agree. And I think the law provides you insight into the world that you do not have without that law degree. I mean, I
For
find just
sure.
understanding the election process, understanding negotiation, I mean, really understanding a lot of things, I think we gleaned from law school.
For sure. Absolutely.
I always encourage people. You know, it is so funny though. I mean, you and I think we're sisters from another mother. I too was in education, completely.
Really?
Yes, I was going to be a teacher. So there I am in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I go teach at this inner city school, do my
Yep.
in-class thing. And wow, was that eye-opening. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a situation with a student who came to school 2 days in a row in the same clothes.
Oh,
And the teacher did not even notice. And I'm like, talking to the teacher, I was like, do you notice she's in the same clothes? Like, and I said, and she was wet. Like she literally, and it rained the night before. And the teacher was like, oh, maybe you're right. So, obviously she got brought to the office. CPS got called. She had been out all night long. And I was
oh,
just like,
geez.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And I'm thinking, I mean, like nobody would have noticed that. I mean, but who can notice all that when there's 36 little kids in
Right.
your class?
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
and all
Hats off to the teachers that do it, man. Hats off.
oh my gosh. And especially during this pandemic,
Oh, the
I'm
worst.
like, you people, I mean, just being able to figure out Zoom. And
Oh,
I've watched a few little Zoom classes with my guardian ad litem work, these little kindergartners and little, they're trying to do their Zoom circles and learn to read. Those teachers are standing on their heads to make
I
it work.
know.
It's
Oh,
amazing.
it's
It
crazy
is
stuff.
amazing. Well, tell us a little bit about your family so we know your mom part too.
Yeah, so I'm married. My husband Jack is also a lawyer. We don't work together, so that's how we stay married. Um, he's a corporate lawyer. I'm an immigration lawyer, and we have an amazing son, the light of our life, Salvatore. He's 14. He just started high school, ninth grade. I'm definitely having it's so silly. It's not empty nest syndrome because he still lives with us, but when they turn teenagers and the only thing we talk about is what's there to eat. Mom, I'm hungry. What do we have to eat? We don't have anything good. Like that's the only conversation. And it's weird. It's, I'm like, whoa, this is weird, but he's a joy. And I've built my whole entire career and practice around him.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. And you're so right about those high school conversations.
Ugh.
I mean, and I think the pandemic, I mean, this is going to sound a little melodramatic, but I think the pandemic is going to really impact parents' relationships with their teens, especially your son's age,
Mhm.
because you get golden nuggets of information in those drives. And
For
when you're
sure.
not having to drive your child, you really are having to pull your child out in other ways and in other arenas. And it is not easy because, I mean,
No.
all they wanna talk about is food, their friends, if they're
Yep.
game players or if they're sports lovers. Doesn't your son maybe play football or did I
Yeah, he just started playing football this year, and because of COVID, they converted it to a flag football league, which was great for me
Yeah,
because I was really worried. But great experience. And it's funny because we have a den in our house and there's two desks, and he does his homework at night. And I'll go in there and just like I'll do my easy work then. I'll just do my emails or my billing because I sit there. And sometimes when he wants a break or he doesn't feel like doing his geometry, then he'll start talking a little bit.
yep,
And it's funny because my husband's like, he never talks. I'm like, I literally plant myself in the den,
yep.
pretending to do work, because I know, let's say out of an hour, he'll talk to me for 5 minutes, which, like, how desperate is that? But the pandemic has created that because we don't have the drive time anymore,
Totally.
which was like for us almost a guaranteed hour, cumulatively together in the day, which that's huge,
Oh,
huge.
it's I mean, the amount I mean, I have 3 boys, 3 girls, I mean, biological and step. The amount of solid communication that occurred in our car, I mean, was hands down the most important communication, and it became a joke. Obviously, as we did this many times, when they would get a license, I used to send them little goodbye cards, and I'd be like, "Okay, I won't be talking to you anymore." And I mean, it became a real joke because, I mean, I really do have to go out of my way to get
Yeah.
those conversations. And I mean, now we have a senior 18-year-old, he's a senior in high school, and he had been living on a boat. I mean, that's a whole nother story, but he's back now at home because we've bought this new house and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna help build it." And I told my husband, I was like, "This is a golden opportunity for us. I mean,
Yeah,
we're gonna be able to do all this work together on this house." And I mean, it's a pretty expensive endeavor to, spend, 6, 8 months with your kid, but I thought this
for
is a
sure.
great opportunity and he loves building.
Oh,
So
that's great.
yeah, oh, he's so excited. Yeah, so it'll be perfect. Well, tell us about your entrepreneur part of this trifecta. How did you decide to go out on your own?
Well, it's really funny. Today, I have a new assistant that started with me, and she was like, "So, it was a really good question. So, like, what inspired you to do this?" And I'm like, "Sheer lunacy. That is it." Like, again, I didn't come out of the womb being like, "I'm gonna be a business owner. I'm gonna be an entrepreneur." No. I'll tell the story that many lawyers have told and will tell again. I was in a large firm, the largest here in Buffalo for 6 years. Great substantive experience. Learned a ton, but I was like, "This is not my game. This is not for me." I couldn't tell if I hated working there in that environment or if I just hated the law. I mean, I was literally at the point where I was looking for alternative degrees. And again, I have an undergrad in English. I was going to go to the School of Library Science to become a librarian because I'm like, this just isn't for me. Um, and I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So my dad immigrated from Italy in 1954 to Canada, and then he married my mom, who was a U.S. citizen, and they moved to the United States in 1964. And they were both hairdressers. And my dad was like, "Well, I'm going to open my own business," because that's the immigrant mentality.
Totally.
So for the better part of 50 years, he had his own hair salon. And my mom worked with him for maybe the first 5 and then determined that it was either staying married or working somewhere else. So she got a job independent of him. And it's funny, when I married a lawyer, she was like, "Do not work together, whatever you do." So we don't. So anyway, my dad was an entrepreneur. So I saw him, it's all I knew growing up was, the client experience. And even though he was doing hair, it's the same thing, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a personal service. And my brother is 5 years older than me. He's a dentist and he has his own practice. So,
Oh,
I've been surrounded by that. So when I was unhappy at the big firm and I was thinking about getting a library degree and all of this stuff, my dad said, why don't you just go on your own? I mean, you've got the kind of job where you don't need big overhead. I mean, when my brother went on his own, boy, you talk about expensive overhead, all the
yeah.
dental equipment, the x-ray machines. I mean, we need a computer and a pen, right? I mean, that's pretty
Right.
much it. So I was like, well, I'll just try it. And in my mind, I was like, well, I can always go to a firm. I mean, worst case scenario. What I didn't know is that, so the year I decided to try it, which was 2005, we got married. I started a business. We got pregnant and we built a house all in like a 6-month period.
Oh, wow.
No bueno. I do not recommend that. And also, I was 33 when I got married. So I was used to living a lifestyle where I went out all the time, went out to lunch, had dinners, traveled. And then came this baby who was colicky for a long time and didn't sleep, and a new marriage and a new house. And, it was all the things that I hoped and dreamed for, but you should never compress all those life events in a short period of time. So the firm for the first couple years was just me. And I would work if and when Salvatore slept. I mean, that was basically the early ages. And I've grown it and scaled it around him. And it's really funny because I know that when kids, the minute they get out of school, like that's when they're going to tell you everything. So I've always been able to pick him up from school.
Yep.
He never takes the bus home, and people think I'm crazy. They're like, why do you do that? I'm like, because if he takes the bus and then he comes home and I say, how's school? And he'll say, fine,
If
good,
that, yeah.
right? If I pick him up, then
Yep.
it's fresh. And I'm like, hey, how was school? And he'll be like, oh my God, so and so brought this for lunch and it was
Yeah.
amazing. And, so you get all that. So I built that into my career.
Yep.
And even to this day, I pick him up from high school. I know when he starts driving again, I'm going to have to give him a goodbye card. But that's really, I wanted the flexibility, I wanted the freedom. And as it turns out, 15 years later, I love being a lawyer. I don't want to be a librarian. I was just in the wrong environment. And for me, I'm a very service-based person because I saw my dad, I see my brother do it. It is all about the client experience. Our clients are our biggest fans, our biggest salespeople. We laugh. One of my lawyers, she's just so gregarious and outgoing. She's always exchanging recipes. And I mean, immigration's really an intimate, emotional area of law where you're directly impacting people's lives for the positive.
Right.
People are getting their work permits, their green cards, their citizen. They are thrilled. They are thrilled. No matter what's going on, turn off the news. People still want to be here in the United States, for
That's
sure.
amazing. That is so awesome. I love that you built your firm though around your son and your schedule. I mean, I did the exact same thing. I started a firm, made it virtual from day one so that everyone, because I was really committed to hiring women coming back into the workforce
Mhm.
who had had children, and didn't want to come back to that grind of being in an office all day and,
Yeah.
finding daycare and all those things that people have to go through. And it has been huge. I mean, I'm with you. I picked my kids up. I attended so many football games. We were a
Mhm.
huge football player family, and it has made all the difference. I mean, I
For
think,
sure.
yeah. Now, interestingly, did you practice immigration in your big firm or did you actually switch practice areas?
No, I've only ever done immigration for
Okay.
23 years straight. I've never practiced another area of law. And for me, it's a calling. And that might sound goofy, but it's like breathing for me. It's what I've always done. I worked at the US Canadian border during college. So, my immigration career goes back to 1993. I sound like I'm 100 years old, but it's all I've ever done. And I just, it's never boring. It's never the same thing twice. I mean, yeah, we have the same cases, but the people are different and the situations are different. And it's so amazing. It never gets old. I just did a consultation this morning with a client and I'm like, oh, tell me about your education. He's Canadian. He's like, well, I have a bachelor's degree. I have 2 master's degrees from Yale in public health. I have an MBA, and then I'm almost done with medical school. And I'm like, what?
Golly.
Like, wow, I think my law degree is like all cool. I am a total slacker, like total.
I
But
love
I love the people. I just love the people.
that's amazing. Ugh. I mean, and you think of all the positive contributions these people
Yeah,
have in our country and just for everything. I mean, it's just that's so awesome. I can't imagine working in an area. Obviously, in family law, it's different. You know,
sure. Yes.
we have a lot of conflict. A lot of times people
Right.
are not thrilled with what's going on,
Yes.
and really trying to create good out of sometimes a really tough, bad situation.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so I think that's amazing. That has to be really inspirational to you as you meet people like that.
And, people don't forget their immigration
Oh,
lawyers. So,
oh,
before COVID, when I used to travel a lot, I would always meet people in the airports. And, it's really funny. I rented a lake house over the summer in it, about an hour away. And I'm on the rental site and, typing away. And it turns out the owner of the lake house is a former client. I did his work permit 19 years ago, 19 years ago. And he's like, hey, remember me? I was just in the beginning of my career. Now I'm an anesthesiologist. I'm like, this is amazing. But
that's
they never
wild.
forget. They just don't. They don't forget. And it's always for a good reason. So I'm really blessed. I always say, like, my clients don't go to jail. They're always really happy.
That's amazing. Well, tell us a little bit, what did scaling your firm look like? Like, what does your firm consist of now?
So it's really funny because for about the first 8 years of the practice, I was going to be the only lawyer. That's it. It was just going to be me. The show stops with me. Because an older lawyer told me once, well, if you have other lawyers, they're just going to come in and steal all your files. So I was like, well, I can't have that happen. So it's just going to be me. Um, and so for the first like 8 years, it was me and a couple of paralegals and an admin. And then this rock star intern came into my office, and her name's Jennifer Bame, and she's a partner right now. And she was amazing. And she said to me, do you have an opportunity for me here? And I was like, oh no, it's nothing personal. I don't do that. So I started floating her resume around to my competitors, and then had this like, oh moment, like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I giving this amazing young lawyer to one of my
To
competitors? So I came back to the office and I'm like, okay, Jen, you're going to be the first Berardi immigration law lawyer. And now 5 or so people into it. Once I made that pivot and was open to having lawyers, then it was kind of like the floodgates came in, because you're limited. If you're just a solo, it's fine. But if you want to grow and be bigger, you can't be a solo. You can only do so much work. So with Jen, I was able to open the gates a little bit more. And then the next lawyer came, and then the next lawyer came. So we have 5 lawyers. We have about 5 or 6, what I call our admin team, which are paralegals, admin, special projects. We have a CFO. We have a really nice group, just under 20, perfect size. It's really a lot of fun.
That is awesome. That's so amazing. Well, I wanted to talk to you about when you and I talked, you said something that has stuck with me. Literally, I've thought about it every day since.
Whoa.
I know you just don't never know when you're really making an impact.
Yeah.
You said, I always say yes. And it is such, I just think that is profound and it is such amazing advice. I want you to talk to us about always saying yes and what that has looked like for you.
Yeah. So in life, I have learned throughout my 48 years that nothing comes at the perfect time, right? I mean, it's just not how life happens. So I have been really open to saying yes, even in horribly inconvenient times. For example, starting my practice and then getting pregnant. A lot of sane people would be like, oh, I'll just go get a job.
Right.
I'll go in a firm. And I'm like, no, I don't want that. I know the flexibility I want and need, and I'm going to stick it out. So that's sort of set the tone for the rest of the firm. So opportunities come along. Recently, in the last year, the University of Buffalo Law School asked me to be an adjunct professor. Not the best timing. In the middle of a pandemic, the borders closed. I had never taught a full-time, full course at the university level, graduate level. And
Right.
I was like, I don't know. And then I'm like, no, I'm doing it because they're not going to ask again. They
Right.
will not. Once you say no, you're done. And I said yes in like 5 minutes. And my husband was like, are you sure? It's a lot of work. Adjunct salaries, they don't pay anything. You don't do it for the pay, right?
No.
Like you do it to get in front of students and to shape the next generation of lawyers and all that good stuff. And I'll tell you, that class kicked me in the butt. It was hard. It was hard because I had never done it before. So I had to create the curriculum. Um, we had class for an hour and a half, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you're performing for
Oh, yeah.
3 hours a week. You can't phone it in. And I'm not teaching 10-year-olds. I'm teaching law students who have like really hard questions.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, oh, about that. Yeah. But I did it and I'm thrilled that I did it and I'll do it again. And I always tell my staff, like, same thing with media interviews. Like when the media calls, you've got to say yes or they're not going to call you again.
Exactly.
And I can't tell you the number because we traveled a ton before COVID. We're a big Disney family. We're always in Disney. Can't tell you the number of media interviews I've done from Disney or in a hotel in Disney because that's what happens, right? Like you can't say no.
Exactly.
And the one time it was right after President Trump won the election and he instituted the travel bans, and a big news station in Toronto wanted me to talk. Well, we were in the middle of Epcot. I wasn't wearing the appropriate clothes. We took the monorail back to our hotel. I didn't bring any like business clothes, so I wore my husband's like zip up black thing, threw on some lipstick. He's holding the camera, on a pillow, trying to make it not shake. I've learned since then. Now I always travel with like a work appropriate shirt and a little tripod. But you don't say no. You don't say no, I'm on holiday or no. And here's a fun fact. There is never a quiet spot in Disney. They pipe in music even in the bathrooms,
Everywhere.
everywhere. And
Everywhere.
and the cast members are not allowed to turn it down because believe me, I've asked.
Yes.
I've done media from every weird place you can think of, but it's got to be done.
Yeah.
It's got to be done. And that I really attribute that attitude to a lot of my success and scaling because if I took opportunities only when that was the perfect time for me, that would be never.
Right.
There's never a perfect time, right? We're always like doing a million things as entrepreneurs and as moms and as lawyers. So for me, it's just leaning in, saying yes. So I always say yes and then I figure it out.
Yep.
And sometimes it's a hot mess, but you know what? I do it.
I think that is, I mean, truly talking to you and hearing that was so transformational to me because I had never put words to it, but I feel the exact same way. You just do it and you figure it out.
Yeah.
And I have this mentality of everything is possible. I mean,
Yeah.
I truly believe there's not a thing in the world that is impossible for me to figure out, which I know sounds crazy conceited, and I don't mean
No,
it in that way
no,
at
no, no.
all. I think of it as, I mean, I'm used to hot messes. Like hot
Right. That's
messes
our
are
life,
my
right?
jam. I mean, I do hot mess better than anybody, and I can whip it up and
Exactly.
turn it into a jambalaya. That's gonna
Right.
blow your
Exactly.
socks off. And so to me, hot mess rolls. And I think that mentality, and it was interesting when we spoke, you even mentioned about how that can be used with your children. How when
Mhm.
you're saying yes to something and how your child might be like, whoa, mom, what's up? What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us a
And
little bit about that.
so I'll be honest with you. The university class kicked me in the butt. It was really hard. I complained about it continually, and my son Salvatore kept saying, like, "Why did you do this? Like, why did you say yes? Like, why don't you just say no?" And I told him, Salvatore, you always say yes. You just always say yes. And yes, I'll complain about it. It's only 12 weeks, a long 12 weeks. But he knows, that's a life lesson for me to teach him that it wasn't perfect timing, but these opportunities don't come along every day, right? And I always say when I do public speaking to groups, like, okay, you're a lawyer, great, congratulations. There's a million lawyers,
Right.
right? It's how do you distinguish yourself? How do you be the go-to? I'm the go-to immigration person for our local media. How do I do that? I say yes when they call. I do a good interview. And when like there's breaking news from an immigration perspective, I'm emailing them saying, hey, this travel ban's coming out.
Right.
Let's talk about it. Um, is that convenient for me? No, they always want to do interviews at terrible times. But that's how you do it. It's scrappy. It's not this like,
Exactly.
oh, I have this all figured. It's scrappy and it's messy. And I love that. Like, that's my element. I'm like, let me at it. Let me
Right.
figure this out. Right. But that's what distinguishes you. There's a million lawyers that aren't doing a lot of things. And I think a lot of them are just afraid. And I've made tons of mistakes. I mean, tons,
Oh, millions.
tons, tons. And already I have anxiety about the class reviews from my law school class because I'm like, oh God, and I just keep saying, I tried my best. I tried my best. And, I've gotten some positive feedback, but I'm like, oh man.
All you can do is learn though, huh? I
Yes,
mean,
for
it
sure.
will only get better. I mean, I joke that I have absolutely failed my way to success. I mean,
Yes.
I have made some doozy mistake and continue to make some
You have to. I mean,
doozy
the
mistakes.
only people that don't make mistakes are the people that aren't doing anything, right? So if you're doing things and you're an entrepreneur, like you're failing all the time. And every once in a while, I'm like, oh, I can't believe I did that. That was so dumb. But I'm like, are you kidding me? The only way that I've scaled my firm to this size is by making a series of disastrous, sometimes expensive mistakes, right? Is what it is.
It
Got to
is.
keep going.
Exactly. Well, and I think of entrepreneurship as this big life experiment. I feel like I'm constantly experimenting in my firm, like maybe if we tweak this, this might help.
Yes.
And sometimes it makes it worse, and I'm like,
Yeah.
whoopsie. That
Whoops. Sorry. Shouldn't have done that. No, I know I do the same thing.
and I just feel like it's all a bunch of experimenting. And one thing that I find, and I'm curious what you find, because you and I have a very similar sized offices. Mine's a little
Mhm.
bigger. I think we're around 24 people. But I mean, I really want people to be radically candid with me. Like when I'm off, doing something that might be obvious to others as a little cray cray. I love for people to be able to come to
Yeah.
me and be like, Elise, yo, what was that?
What are you
What
doing?
are you
Yeah.
thinking? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, for sure. I like to have that open communication. And it's funny, we hired a social media group. They didn't work out. My partner Jen, when I was ready to hire them, she's like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And of course it was a disaster. And I said to her after that fact, "You got to be firmer with me. You got to be like, what the hell are you thinking? This is a terrible idea."
Right.
She's like, "Well, I always defer to you because you're older." I'm like, "No,
No.
no, no, I'm the idea person. It doesn't mean all of my ideas are good ones,
Oh
right?"
my God.
Like,
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know. Have you read any of like Traction or Rocket Fuel or any of those books?
rocket fuel, yep,
Yeah, and I mean, I'm definitely the visionary. I'm that
yes,
idea person
same,
just like you are. I mean, I am like spewing off ideas like crazy, but I mean, some of them are so whacked out the door. Like
yeah.
I should not be allowed to run with them even for 10 minutes. You
Oh,
know, and
100%.
I mean, having a person who will be, I mean, I don't even think of my equal, but I mean, will be above me, like stronger, and will be just like,
Yes,
no, Elise, we are not doing that.
yes.
And
Well,
I,
I'll give you a funny example. Like when the pandemic first hit, everybody was talking about using Slack. And I'm like, "Oh, we need to use Slack. We have to use Slack." And so I had one of my team members look into it and she's like, "This doesn't even apply to like how we work. Like we all pretty much work in the same office. We're not all over the place, She's like, "No." I'm like, "Okay, thank you for letting me know."
yeah,
But I was like, "Oh, we have to, right?"
we're virtual, so we're all over Washington. I mean, we have people in Arizona, Pennsylvania. I
Yeah.
mean, we're everywhere. Slack is a godsend. I mean,
Yes.
in some ways, then when I look at the monthly things, I'm like, did we actually send 20,000 Slack messages? I'm
I
like,
know.
I wonder just how much that impacts productivity. But
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. For sure.
I mean, our Slack is definitely, I mean, it's full of hilarity, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of it going on for sure.
Good
Well,
stuff.
tell us, I mean, what are you thinking about for 2021? I mean, as we're all kind of in the midst of, I don't know what you'd call it, the third surge of our of
Oh
the COVID.
God.
I mean, what are you looking ahead for and what do you think is going to be happening? I mean, obviously with the election, there's changes. I'm sure your
Yep.
immigration practice will see changes.
Yeah, so from the immigration side, it's a really interesting time because the US Canadian and the US Mexican borders are closed, which would sound like my business would go under very quickly, but they're closed with an asterisk. And that asterisk means that they're still open for work permit and business processing. So for us, that's been a godsend. We're still, going pretty strong. And I expect that to continue into 2021. Now with the economy, who knows, right? The economy
Right.
gets soft, people don't hire. But with the Biden administration, we're expecting to see immigration become a little bit easier, certainly not more difficult. So that's a welcome change. The last 4 years has been really challenging. And when my lawyers were complaining about it, I said, just think this administration's making you such a good lawyer right now. You're pulling out all the stops here to get our folks in. So on that front, we'll see how that goes. Personally, there was a pandemic. I had some downtime and I couldn't just reorganize my closet because that's not my DNA. So I started another business. I started Highwire Woman, and Highwire Woman is a consulting business for women lawyers that are trying to do it all. And I picked the name Highwire Woman very strategically because that is how we walk every day, right? We're walking on that tightrope saying, oh, I hope I don't fall and kill myself.
Right.
And I'm sure you get a lot of this type of questioning over the years because you've built the firm, but people are like, how do you do it? How do you do it all? How do you go to Disney 5 times a year? How do you take this time off? So I created Highwire Woman to teach people the magic of doing it all and figuring it out because it's hard. And man, when I started the business in April, I thought we were just flattening the curve. I didn't know we were signing up for COVID for a long
Right.
time. And now, I mean, want to talk about a high wire with remote learning and working from home. And in our area currently, all the restaurants are closed. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to escape. And working from home is a blessing and a curse, but the curse of it is you're never off or away. Like we don't have those boundaries of the commute or, the 2 p.m. coffee meeting with another colleague. Like we don't have that anymore. And that's dangerous, especially for working women, because women are just, we can't take breaks, right? Like it's not cool. Like to me, I want to be the person that works the least and makes the most. That's my badge of honor.
Right.
I am not going to be that lawyer that is collapsed at my desk when I'm 80 years old and I never took a vacation and, I work through Christmas. No, absolutely not. So Highwire Women teaches women lawyers how to let go of that. Now, if that's what you want, God bless you. That's just not for me. The days we have on the planet are limited. And yes, I love what I do and it's so impactful, but there's also a whole lot of other stuff I love to do. And that's what I'm really passionate about teaching.
That is so awesome. Well, how has it been going? I mean, starting a business in a pandemic has to be a little interesting, but I know you're tenacious, so it will
Yeah,
succeed.
it's interesting because the overachiever in me is like, oh my God, I don't have as many clients as I thought I would. Well, I wonder why. Maybe there's this economic collapse, thing going on around the world. So it's been really fun. I've done a lot of podcasts, a lot of media. I'm starting some coaching programs beginning of January. And Highwire Women is not intended to blow up in scale.
Right.
I don't want another really big business. I want a handful of clients that I'm working with and helping them tangibly improve their lives. So I have a group coaching session that's going to start in January on January 11th. That's only going to be open till about 10 people. And then I have one-on-one coaching. I really only want 5 one-on-one clients, just 5. So I could do a deep dive. No one else is going to be doing those sessions but me. And I'm super passionate about it, but it has been a struggle. And there's that little voice in my head that's like, well, you started a business once already. Like, why would you do this to yourself? Because, at the beginning of any business and even running it, there's a lot of no's, there's a lot of rejection, there's a lot of money being spent and none coming in, right? So here I am again, but I'm thrilled. It's my passion business. And I thought I was going to do this in about 5 years, but then I had like a day where I wasn't that busy and I'm like, I'm going to do it now. And my partner here at the firm was like, that was your plan in 2025. I'm like, details.
Yeah. Details, details.
Details, 2020, 2025,
Right.
all good.
It's all the same.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm really super excited. I mean, it's the life I live, right? I'm not telling tales out of school. I know how to build firms. I know how to juggle. I know how to be in my kid's life. Like I've done that. And there's so many women that, they're thrown into law firms and they're not taught how to
Totally.
develop business. Now, your entire existence at a firm is based on how well you can develop business. But yet, no one ever teaches you,
Completely. Well,
right?
half the time nobody wants to teach you because they don't want you to
No,
succeed ahead of them. I mean,
exactly.
I
It's
found when I
right.
was in a big firm when first practicing, I mean, I am so extroverted. So I would meet people and I would go out with clients and do things. And then clients would be like, oh, I want Elise to handle the case. And then whoever the partner was would be all angry, like, how did you talk to my client? Or how did you do
Yes.
this? And I was like, aren't I supposed to develop relationships with
No,
our clients?
not
And
that much.
no was absolutely the answer. Like,
Yeah.
no. And I thought, this is crazy. Like, because I think it's that mindset though of that the world is a pie. And I'm like, the world is not a pie.
No.
The world is abundant and there are clients, there are cases for everyone. And I could never understand that mentality. And it's interesting hearing your initial story about how, people tried to scare you about hiring associates. And
Right,
I
right,
think that is a real thing that we small business owners and law firm owners have to think about. And it's something that I think is very, really important is when I bring people on, if they want to go elsewhere, I want them to go
right,
elsewhere
exactly.
happily with all the tools I can provide them with
Sure.
the easiest transition known to man, where I mean, I'm like, what can I do to facilitate what you want to do? How is that going to be negative? Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
that person is going to be a referral source for me. I
Yeah,
will be a referral source for them. Like it's always positive. And so that mindset of people stealing work, I'm just like, it's just not a thing.
right.
But people try to make it a thing all the
Oh,
time.
absolutely. I mean, even my father is 81, right? And so we have all these corporate clients and I have all my lawyers work on the files and he's
Right.
like, "What are you doing? Only you should work on those. Those are the big corporations. They're going to steal." I'm like, "Dad, are you crazy?" First
Yeah,
of all, I don't want to do that. Second of all, this is what they're here for. This is an opportunity for them to do
absolutely.
really good work under my supervision and establish relationships with the clients. Like, this is how we're set up. And he's like, oh, okay.
I know. Yeah, it's a really interesting mindset shift, I think. And I'm thrilled for your new business. I just think it's wonderful. And I think starting a passion business is just, I mean, it really revitalizes you. I mean,
For sure.
it's something that I'm doing as well. I know I mentioned we're buying this new property. I want to do retreats and the same
Ah,
kind of thing to bring in.
I'm
Well,
coming.
I know. Well, you are. You're going to come as one of my coaches because
Please.
I mean, I want women to have a place where they can relax and unwind and get connected with other women who are sharing
Yes.
the same issues, but deeply where we could come back year after year with the same group of people where they are watching each other and cheering each other on. Like that is the one of the things that I think in the law we really miss is
For
this
sure.
camaraderie where we are supporting each other fully rather than like looking at each other's success and somehow being jealous or envious. I
Yes.
love to see people. I mean, I have a competitor here in Seattle who's she's involved in Maximum Lawyer, Michelle Delino. And I mean, I love her success. When I see her doing cool things,
Right.
I'm always like, this is awesome. Like, this is, what a great idea. And I mean, I learned so much from her. Do you know what I mean? And
For sure.
but there's nothing negative. It's all just like positive, and we want each other to do well. And I just think we need more of that because
For sure.
I mean, the support we need, and because what we pull off, your high wire, I mean, name of your business is so apt. I
Yeah.
mean,
For Sure.
talk about strategic. When you mentioned about, you worrying about falling and dying, and I'm like, and killing all of those that we fall on. I mean, you worry about your child. I know
Yeah,
you
for
do.
sure.
I mean, and I'm like, oh my gosh, have I ruined my kids? Because, I've never like done all the exact things I'm supposed to, or,
Right.
you
Right.
know, you do worry.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was flipping through the Martha Stewart Living magazine. And it's like, why do I look at Martha Stewart's? Like, I am not that mom. I don't bake. I don't sew. But I read her little thing because the magazine's 30 years old, which is
Right.
shocking to me. And she talked a lot about her daughter, who she's had a contentious relationship with, and she still admits it. And she said, I wasn't there. I wasn't plugged in when I needed to be,
Mhm.
and I've suffered from that for the rest of my life. And I thought, wow, like how how sad and how
Yeah,
profound is that? We've got Martha Stewart, who we all, look up to, and who's probably a multimillionaire 10 times over, right? But on the 30th anniversary of her very successful magazine, this is what she's writing about.
right.
And I
That is
thought,
fascinating.
yeah, this is interesting. And, in our industry, it's like this hostile competitiveness, right? Like,
Totally.
well, I don't want her to do better than me because then I'm going to look bad. And we don't have that camaraderie. And I think you've identified a weakness in the law, and women are craving it. They just don't know how to get it or what to do. So I'm coming whether you invite me or not.
Oh, you're totally coming. Absolutely. Well, I think it is critical, and I think in this pandemic, I mean, I feel like I see such a need for authentic connection among attorneys because we have been pivoting and pivoting since March 1st,
For sure.
dealing with this and trying to figure out how can we keep our businesses. And I mean, with those of us with staff, I know for me that's been a huge thing, like
For sure.
making sure I can protect my team, and having those tough conversations with my family initially, because I was like, I have no idea if I'm bringing in any money. I told my
I
son, I
know.
was like, your swanky private school is out, dude. I'm like, I am not getting rid of my intake single mom for your
Right.
swanky private school. So get used to the public school, buy
Right.
some green and white, you're gonna be fine. And I mean, I didn't end up having to pull him out, but I mean, we were really prepared for the
Yeah.
worst, and trying to deal with that. And yeah, I mean, I think there's so much more we women can do to support each other and bolster each other. And I look at so many trainings that I've gone to over the years, and it's just been all men. And I've obviously, I mean, I've learned a lot from all men. Don't
Yes.
get me wrong. Like I am not a man hater, but at
No,
the same time, we have very different realities,
for sure.
and I mean, many of us moms still handle that emotional unpaid labor. And I'm not saying
Absolutely.
all of us, and I many men I know have stepped up, but I mean, there's a huge number of women who are still doing that unpaid labor and figuring out how to navigate it among being a lawyer and an entrepreneur. I mean, that is not a small task.
No, it's not easy at all. And then you hear women walking around like, "Oh, my life's a mess. I'm such a failure." It's like, "Oh my God, how many more things could you possibly try to do?" Right? Like, I mean, give yourself a break. And I mean, I'm guilty of it, right? We all have that negative voice sometimes that's just like, oh God, and now, my God, with the holidays coming up, this is the season of insanity where we're like, we have to bake, we have to put up our tree, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. We don't have to do any of those things.
None of it. None of it. As you and
Really
I
don't.
were
I mean,
talking about before the thing, and when I asked my son about this, he's like, when I said, "Do what about the holidays and decorating?" Because we're having to move now. I mean, it's a long story, but he was like, "Well, mom, we're living in the woods. Nobody's gonna see it." I was like, "Well, I don't put it up for them." I was like, "It's for you kids." He's like, "All these years that was for us." He's like, "I'm good. I do not care." And I was like,
yeah,
"Oh." I'm like, "Who knew?" So I
yeah,
think there will be 0 decorating. I'm gonna be Melania this year,
yeah,
like,
nothing,
I'm out. Peace out
not
with the
happening. And
decorating.
one of my lawyers here, like, she struggles because she doesn't like to bake. She's not a baker. Every time she bakes, she's miserable. And I said to her, don't. Like, why are you doing this? Well, my 4-year-old, I want her to have memories. I'm like, okay, she's gonna have memories of you being angry,
Freaking out.
wearing as you're frosting cookies. Like, pick something you like to do, and that will be your memory. Like, we're so trapped. Like, we've made so much progress as women, but we're so trapped in these shoulds of
Oh,
the past, right? Like, I
totally.
should do this. I should make a homemade meal every night. We should do plant-based food. No, stop it. No, just whatever you can eat, eat, the end. Simple, quick, fast. If you have to order it out, who cares, right? Our mothers, like I always say, my mom passed away 8 years ago. If she lived in the world of modern conveniences that we have today, she wouldn't have done any of that stuff that
Totally.
she did at all. She would have gotten a rotisserie chicken every single night for dinner.
Absolutely. And been like, check out this gourmet dinner I am
Yes.
providing you.
Yeah, like she would never have made homemade potato salad when you could just get it at the local grocery store. Like, it's just a different time, and I have to challenge myself, like, let that go. That
Yep.
was a different time. I'm not going to do the same things, and your kids don't care. Your kids only know what you show them, and the memories that they have are the ones that you make. And if they're not the same ones, I always say, like, forget the Pottery Barn catalog. That's not your life.
Right.
Like, I don't decorate my child's bedroom for Christmas. I just don't. Even though Pottery Barn,
Oh my gosh.
I
I
know,
don't know
right?
how he has survived this
I
long.
know he's going to need
Mr.
intensive
I mean,
therapy.
therapy is an understatement of
Yeah,
what he's
I
gonna
know.
need.
Because Pottery Barn has the beautiful bedroom, with the wreath and the pillow. I'm like, oh my God, if like we make his bed once a week, it's like a win, right?
I mean, for real, and I'd be waiting for the cats to pee on the wreaths in the kids' room, and I'd never know about it.
Exactly. So it's like, let it go. Focus on, like, we have so many important things to do. Focus on those and let all this crap just go away. I can't, that's just what I'm all about right now.
Well, and when you were telling me, you have to tell our listeners about your Thanksgiving tradition. I just thought it was really probably the best thing I've ever heard to do on Thanksgiving morning.
Yeah, so we have this tradition. We've only been in our current house for about 3 years, and it's a small neighborhood, only 14 houses, two cul-de-sacs, but there's a lot of boys Salvatore's age. So we started having a Thanksgiving morning football game.
I
So
just
every Thanksgiving morning at 11 o'clock, the neighbors come down, and we live in Buffalo. It could either be sunny, it could be snowing. This year it was like a drizzle, kind of 45-ish. But they get out there, my husband gets out there, my brother-in-law gets out there, and they play for an hour. And my son, it's better than Christmas morning for him.
oh,
It's
yeah.
all that he thinks about. And it's funny because a couple of years ago, we were going to go to Paris for this conference, and I was going to extend our stay to hit Thanksgiving. And he's like, we can't be in Paris for Thanksgiving. I'm like, why? He's like, the football game. I'm like, yeah, but it's Paris. He's like, who cares? And it turns out we didn't wind up going, but that's how important it is. And it's
Absolutely.
really fun because they look forward to it. I get pizza for lunch. They have pizza, and then we do a second shift of dinner and stuff, around 4 or 5 o'clock with our family. But it's just a lot of fun. And while they're out there playing, because I don't do that, I'm just like the concession person. I have
Right.
the snacks and the hot cocoa. But for me, that signals I always sit down and I watch the Macy's Day Parade by myself with a
Right.
nice cup of coffee. And for me, that's like so thankful. Like, they're there, I'm here,
It's
we're together.
wonderful.
Like, it's, to me, that's one of my favorite moments of the whole year.
I just love that. I think that is so wonderful. I mean, we fry our turkey and it's a big deal. We all go out there, we're like analyzing the temperature of the oil, and it's just, my poor husband has to
Funny.
go through all this,
Oh
just to
my
get
God.
the turkey in. But I love traditions like that. I just think, I mean, those are the kind of things that really do stick with
Yes.
kids.
Yes, for sure. And I hope when my son's older, he carries that on, right? Because
Absolutely.
it's really important to him and so much fun. And I was kind of worried this year with COVID, but he hangs out with the neighborhood kids every day. So,
Outside.
I contacted their parents and they were like, they're outside, they're together all the time anyway. And I was like, all right, well, I just want to make sure, I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable, but they were fine. And it was just so fun, so much fun. And it's funny, I go to the second story of our house and I take pictures looking down. I'm like the weirdo in the window taking pictures. But we all have our roles to play in the game, and that's mine. So
Absolutely. That is so awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rosanna,
oh,
for
you're
being
welcome.
here with
Thank
me
you.
today. Oh, I love talking to you. I mean, I think you and I absolutely are sisters from
I
another
think
mother.
so too. Absolutely. My
I think I could be Italian for sure. I
come
like that.
on to the dark side. I will feed you properly.
I hope you have a wonderful day, and
You
thanks
too.
again
Thank
for
you
being
so
with
much.
us.
My
Okay,
pleasure. Take
enjoy.
care. Bye bye.
Okay, bye-bye.